So anyway, what you were speaking about today, yesterday, about samatha, how to practice samatha,
how to calm down
in regards to the breath.
Well, especially because we talk, as I said, we talk a lot about the right endurance and sense restraint, and every description of the gradual training in the suttas starts with that. So you won't be doing proper samadhi unless you're fully restrained, curbed, and self-controlled. So that is like seeing the danger in the slightest fault, then not following things with eyes, ears, nose, and so on, and eating in moderation, exactly, and then that leads to the kind of watchfulness, and then samadhi, and so on. So, but it might create an impression that, okay, so it's just about endurance. A lot, it's about endurance, but then there is a point where you can calm within the endurance, calm yourself within the endurance. So then, the same endurance is not unpleasant. That patient endurance, as the foremost austerity, it does not need to be felt unpleasantly, and that's the that's the difference in the suttas when it talks about the like Mahamoggallana, his way to enlightenment was quick and pleasant, as in it didn't take long, because he was the master of the right samatha, the right calming. So although he went through the same process of abandoning kilesa and everything else that would make people go mad, for him he didn't feel any displeasure because his mind was so unshakable. Sariputta, on the other hand, the foremost in wisdom after the Buddha, he said his way was long and unpleasant, so he had to endure more pain, that on account of that patient endurance. Of course, he still had samadhi and jhanas and so on, and when he did, he became enlightened. So the role of that samatha, which often goes with vipassana, is obviously significant and crucial in a way. But as I was always saying, you can't meditate rightly unless you have the right view. That statement can be a bit too abstract for people. So practically, the reason why you won't be meditating rightly without a right view is because your meditation, your samatha, will not be calming of the endurance. It will be rooted in aversion towards endurance. It will be rooted in you trying to get rid of the discomfort of endurance through this meditation technique. And means you don't want to endure, which means you're ignoring, you're blocking the direction through which samatha would work, calm you, and make your way to enlightenment pleasant.
Make your endurance pleasant.
So endurance is not negotiable.
Right.
How much you're going to suffer on account of it, how much your mind will be tormented, that depends on an individual, depending on your faculties, if you're more about like vipassana side, or if you're more about calming down, but it needs to be done. That's why, again, gradual way always starts by sila, seeing the danger in the slightest fault, full sense restraint, not giving in to sensuality, acting out of ill will, distraction, moderation in eating, results in watchfulness, results in build-up of endurance, and now within that, you can learn what calmness is, what true samatha is, but not at the expense, or not like, I'll deal with endurance, the pain of it, I'll deal with the discomfort, I'll manage it. Because for most people, without a right view, that's what meditation is. Which means just becomes another management, another cover-up that's rooted in aversion towards discomfort. And you're not uprooting anything.
So, one is enduring, not giving in to any defilements, and the pressure is there, pressuring, but you're not giving in.
You're not giving in. There you go. That's your endurance. Then, again, you have a pressure, and that's why it's pressure. Like, but just, do this or do that, in order to get rid of the pressure. So you see that, you feel that. Whatever you'll be doing, you'll be acting in order to get rid of the pressure. So while you're all full of doubt, conflicted, giving in, or refusing to give in, tempted, pressured, enduring the pain, what else is there that you are kind of aware of, and you can be aware of, and it's enduring, and you're doing it And it doesn't require effort, and it doesn't require special intention, and it cannot become something you do in order to get rid of this or that, because it's just too subtle of an action. What is there happening while you're all tormented with the pressure you're not giving in? Breathing in, breathing out. That's what's happening. So that's why it's the Anapanasati, whenever the Buddha describes it, it's like he knows, like knowingly he breathes in, knowingly. So it's about the knowledge of your breath, that it's already there, happening to the body, so to speak. So that's what we speak, that's what we say, like the peripheral. So it's not like, okay, so you might even, like, you know, if you're all wound up through that endurance and senses pressuring you and so on, you might feel like, okay, so I'll breathe in like this, I'll breathe in like, yeah, whatever, do it. But at the same time, just know that you can only do that because the breath is already there, breathing. So it's effortless. That's why it's a neutral action. It's an action that cannot, truly, if you see it in that peripheral sense, like if you just know it, not necessarily do it, because you don't need to do it in order to breathe. You're already breathing while you're trying to do all these other things, including enduring, getting rid of the endurance, and so on. So that's why, all I need to do, I don't need to do this in order for it to be the action that will calm me down. All I need to do is know it happening underneath whatever's going on here. Mindfulness of breathing, because it's underneath already. So that's what means put it first. Put it before whatever else you're occupied with. Not in response to, not at the expense of, and so on. And even now, while we're talking, breathing is there. And you can know, even while you're talking, that you're still breathing in, breathing out. You don't need to control it. You need to stop it. I don't need to stop. Am I breathing? I know I'm breathing. However, vaguely, there is still the thread of the knowledge of the same breath. Breathing in, breathing out. So it's that thread of that peripheral knowledge that doesn't require any action, just pure recognition. That's how you start to practice Anapanasati in the right direction. As just something you're aware of that's there. You're not doing it in response to this. It's there happening. And you just choose to not forget it. That's it. Within this pressure or whatever else. And if you cultivate sufficiently enough that not forgetting of the breath, recollectedness of the breath, mindfulness of the breath, that's why it's sati, it will calm down any hindrance that was there occupying you or pressuring you. It will take away that first person like engagement with this pressure, with this hindrance, and I must do this, I must do this. And it's just, things will be just seen for what they are, enduring their neither pleasant nor unpleasant, neutral. And that in itself would be very pleasant, obviously, because you just relieve yourself of pressure without trying to get rid of it. And that's the true samatha. And then like, oh yeah, that's samatha you can do. Because you have the right view now that prevents you from trying to manage at any expense, that recognizes within the endurance I need to find the calmness, and that will then force you in the direction of what true calmness is. So you know there's an in-breath and out-breath. An action that is within my experience and pretty much fundamental for any other action I do. It precedes it structurally, so to speak. Like, you know, I can stand up, walk, talk. All of that requires breathing to be there. And that's how you calm the sankhara, the determination of the body. Through calming the determination of the body, which is in and out of breath, all your bodily actions will calm down. Or the pressures towards bodily actions will come down. And there's a similar way I said, Anapanasati, when practiced, made much of, when you become proficient in it properly, through that non-management, but the direction of calming of your pressure through it, it's like the rain, they would sort of clean the air of all the dust particles. But you can't emphasize enough the point that, like, if you're doing it as a technique, as a method, as something you're doing, adhering, focusing hard in front of you, you're doing it at the expense of your container of endurance that you have developed. You're doing it as an escape. Means you're doing it because you're averse towards the discomfort of it. And that's why you're doing it wrong. That's why it's just the extension of sensuality. Because what else is the principle of sensuality? Is underlying tendency to aversion, turns you towards getting rid of it by the means of anything that's not as averse or more pleasant. That's the principle of sensuality. That's where people go to sensual desires and so on. And the Buddha said that when an ignoble mind is touched by an unpleasant feeling, doesn't know any other escape, doesn't know any other calming in regard to the discomfort it endures, other than turning towards sensuality. But each time they turn to sensuality, more of the underlying tendency because of which they were suffering on account of the original discomfort will increase. And then the underlying tendency for depending on more pleasure will also increase. So the more you give in to the direction of trying to manage, get rid of your pain, get rid of the suffering through replacing it through any more pleasant experience, well, the worse it gets, like scratching the itch. So that's the whole point of sila, sense restraint, virtue, moderation, watchfulness. It's exactly that, to provide you container. They will not go to sensuality. They will reveal, and literally what you're averse to, it's no one's fault. It's the setup of the aggregates, the setup of the senses. They are basically, well, they're not pleasant in themselves. Let's put it that way. Having a body is a chore. Having senses is it's this resistance, natural resistance that you are paired with, and you have to endure whether you want it or not. So that's why, like, see, you're not born with all this, like a newborn baby doesn't have all this proliferous sensuality, but it has a setup of the senses that in themselves are pressuring, unpleasant, resisting. Ignorant mind, and that means automatic direction towards pleasure, avoiding this. And that's the way we refer to the newborn baby. Has the same underlying tendencies. That's why it will become the mind that dependent on sensuality, that doesn't want pain. So your patient endurance, your sila samadhi is about to containing you trying to spill out towards senses at the expense of the senses that are kind of unendurable, or so it feels. And by the way, that's also why ill will is paired with it. You are already averse towards your own sense bases. Neutrality, it's the aversion, because they are unpleasant. If you don't endure that aversion, if you don't calm yourself in regard to the aversion of your own senses, you go out there for pleasure, which means you will go out there for any other kind of that aversion will proliferate with you going out there with the pleasure. So people have ill will towards other people because fundamentally they carry ill will towards their own senses. That's the root of every ill will. And because of the aversion towards their own senses, they are dependent on sensuality through other people and the world. It's the same root. So you uproot that root of aversion towards your own senses, and you have lost any sensual desire or any ill will towards anywhere in the world.
That doesn't make the senses comfortable.
No. Just makes your mind go beyond that basic discomfort of the senses that you never ever addressed, because from the moment you were born, your mind was going in the direction of the world to avoid. Again, that's why people fear boredom. Boredom just brings back that which you've been outrunning from the day one. The discomfort of your senses. They're truly uncomfortable. So, samatha is when you stop giving in blindly and holding views that are about management of that discomfort. Samatha is calming of that discomfort after you have endured it sufficiently enough and developed clarity in regard to it. So calming the discomfort within that. How do you calm it? Well, any satipatthana would calm it. But it might be too abstract, like, my body's here or something, too much. Activity of breath. That it's there all the time, from the day one as well. And it kind of precedes the senses. It doesn't require your senses in order to breathe. So if you cultivate it, make much of your breath as calming of the endurance that it's not negotiable, that's arahantship. In half a night, 7 days, fortnight, 7 months or 7 years at most. Because the only reason you still depend on sensuality, distraction and so on is because you're still unable to endure the core of the problem, which is the senses. And that's why an arahant in the suttas, who becomes awakened, he says, I've done all the work, there's absolutely no more resistance, no more lust towards anything in the world, no more conceit, nothing left. Any disturbance that's left for me is just on account of this sixth sense body that's left until it breaks apart. And that's no disturbance anymore. See, because you're not actually, the senses are kind of uncomfortable, but they're not dukkha in themselves. It's your resistance, aversion to discomfort on the deepest level of me, Because that's the root of the problem. This here is uncomfortable, and automatically that discomfort means aversion for me. So it's not like I must get rid of the senses, I must kill this body, I must... No, well, you're just going to send yourself to who knows what other body. You know, it's a good opportunity to actually just train in regard to discomfort of the senses and not being averse towards it, through discovering calmness within it, because there is, like eye of the storm. But it takes effort. You need to develop it, and when you do, all of the fetters that depend on the world are gone. Mind is unmoved, because that's what was moving the mind, the aversion towards this thing that I don't want, nothing else. Everything else was secondary. You know, all the wrong views and all the sensuality, it was all secondary, rooted in this. So that's the correct samatha.